This week on The Watchman, we're taking you back to southern Israel for part 2 of our 2-part series on the Hamas threat. Now, last week we showed you how Hamas is rebuilding its rocket arsenal and digging terror tunnels from Gaza into southern Israel. Well, today we will take you to the city of Sderot, a city which has borne the brunt of this Hamas jihad against Israel over the past 2 decades. The people of Sderot have been down at times, but they are anything but out. As we will show you today, they are resilient. They are Israelis. It's The Watchman. It's Christians United for Israel, only right here on TBN. And welcome to The Watchman. Well, I'm standing in Sderot, Israel, in the southern part of the country, just about a mile from the Gaza border. Gaza, where Hamas rules, where Hamas directs a terror campaign against the Jewish communities of southern Israel, in particular Sderot, folks. This has been the focus for the past decade plus. Has this small working class town of about 25,000 people, this has really been the focus for much of the Hamas terror. That means the rockets, the missiles, thousands upon thousands of rockets and missiles have fallen over Sderot over the past several years, and those terror tunnels that Hamas is digging under the border from Gaza into southern Israel. All of this is targeting this very beautiful community of Sderot. And where I'm standing right now is really a symbol of the profound impact, the human impact that this Hamas terror campaign has had on this community in Sderot. I'm standing in an abandoned school. Now, this was a school for children from 1st grade through 8th grade. At one time, hundreds of students went to this school. Now it's abandoned because it was struck by Hamas rockets coming from Gaza, again, just a mile away. We have here a bomb shelter. We have sirens that would go off. And when those sirens go off to alert people about the incoming rockets and missiles, folks, they have 15 seconds to scatter and find shelter in one of these bomb shelters that we see right now. We see overhead a protective barrier above the school that was also meant to protect it from rockets and missiles. Now, the school eventually had to close because they couldn't cover the entire roof. They covered, I believe, the lower grades, 1st, 2nd grade there, but they couldn't cover the entire school. Folks, imagine having to send your children to a school under those conditions. So this school had to close because of Hamas's genocidal campaign against the Jewish people. And that's the truth. But the good news is, and we're going to bring you a lot of good news today, we're going to show you the tragedy, the suffering, the human stories about life here in Sderot due to the Hamas terror campaign. But we're also going to show you some encouraging developments in this great town. The good news is, yes, this school closed, but more schools are opening here in Sderot. The community in Sderot is resilient, they're strong, they're Israeli. And here at Christians United for Israel, we thought it was very important to bring you here to get an up-close look at life in Sderot. The bad, the Hamas terror campaign, and Sderot's really the symbol of that in many ways, especially the rockets and missiles, but also the good. For a closer look at how the Hamas terror campaign has affected daily life in Sderot and how this city is on the rebound, we're joined by Noam Badin of the Sderot Media Center.
Welcome to the Sderot police station. As you can see, we have a bunch of the Qassam rockets that exploded here in Sderot in the region itself. There are around 200 rockets displayed over here, which is a very small fraction of the entire rockets being fired towards this region. There are around 20 types of rockets, different sizes, different length, different colors. You can see over there behind this glass, different colors indicating a different terrorist organization that takes pride of firing these rockets. By the way,
now we have Hamas,
Islamic Jihad, Al-Qaeda, and since June we've been having ISIS taking responsibility for firing rockets. A lot of clashes in the Gaza Strip amongst all the different terrorist organizations.
ISIS is trying to establish a presence in the Gaza Strip at Israel's doorstep as well.
Right. So since this past June, there's been an increase of rocket fire. This is right now, as we speak, our 5th ceasefire between Hamas and Israel. In the past 8 years, we had 4 military operations in the past couple of years. In 8 years since the disengagement, since Israel pulled out from the Gaza Strip. Very critical point to be explaining to people how Israel is the only country in modern history that ever give land for peace after winning a war. It took 7 years to disengage from the Gaza Strip, putting most Israeli population under Iranian missile fire from Gaza.
And by the way, some of these missiles that we see here, Noam, are Iranian-made, Iranian-sponsored weapons.
That is true. In the past 3 years, we've been having Iranian missiles, like you'd see over here. They're more sophisticated missiles. They have an impact of 1,000 feet of complete damage. It can go through, 3-4-story high buildings that I've been experiencing myself in the larger cities on the southern part of Israel. Right. And that's basically the impact as well, having the Iranian aspect on Israel's backyard.
So Iran is essentially kind of a game changer, the Iranian involvement in Gaza, sponsoring terror groups there. They're giving more advanced weaponry to the likes of Hamas and Islamic Jihad.
100%. Gaza is going to remain a main conflict with Israel for many more years if we like it or not, controversial as it actually sounds, and how not easy to be understanding what is it we're dealing with today. Unfortunately, being realistic on the Gaza border, it's not a question of if, it's a question of when is going to be the next rocket escalation, being very realistic at the same time.
Now, what do you think, Noam? We saw, I guess, a bit of a lull after Operation Protective Edge in the summer of 2014. Now you've said we're seeing this uptick again since June 2015. Is there any particular reason that the likes of Hamas are upping the rocket fire now in the past few months?
The truth is that when this a ceasefire period of time, it's the other terrorist organization that takes more responsibility, like ISIS, even though Hamas is controlling the Gaza Strip since June 2007. The other terrorist organization take responsibility for firing these rockets as well. Even though Hamas is controlling, of course, the say is coming from Hamas overall. But we understand, as we said very clearly, it's just a matter of time to the next rocket escalation. It's just being very realistic on the ground with what's been happening here as well.
It's an unending barrage, Noam, and we'll talk also about the new facet of this war coming out of Gaza, the terror tunnels. I know you and I will talk about today as well. But tell our audience, Noam, since the disengagement from Gaza, and since around 2000, 2001, do we have an estimate? We see a bunch of these rockets and missiles here right now in Sderot, in Israel, on the doorstep of Gaza. Do we have an estimate how many have come in the past 15, 16 years or so? Thousands, right?
I'll be honest, if you ask this question here in Israel, how many rockets have been fired from Gaza towards Israel since the disengagement? It's been over 24,000 rockets being fired from Gaza towards Israel. Now again, being here today in Sderot, explaining how unique this reality actually is explaining very clearly what other country in the world would tolerate only one rocket being fired towards its territory. I came back from San Diego campuses just a couple months ago. You put the resemblance, what would happen if only one rocket be fired from Tijuana towards San Diego, what the response would be?
Yeah, Noam, that's a key point. And folks at home watching, look, Noam makes a key point. If you're in the United States, imagine if you lived in Minnesota and a daily barrage of rockets and missiles were hitting your state, or if you lived in Texas, California, and a barrage of rockets and missiles were coming against your state every day. What would America do under such a threat? Well, Israel has been dealing with this for well over a decade now, as Noam said. 24,000 rockets and missiles, and unfortunately really affecting communities like right here in Sderot in the south in particular.
I think the hardest thing to explain to people living here on the Gaza border is trying to explain that once a rocket is being fired from Gaza towards Sderot and the whole western Negev region, we have more or less 15 seconds or less to run for your life. Now the question is, what can you possibly do in 15 seconds?
The sirens go off.
Yeah, and that's became the challenge, to try expressing this daily routine life sometimes, and this human aspect of the story living on the Gaza border. Do not take my word. If people come to this region, just talk to people, be amazed to realize how every single person in this town and region has the experience of a rocket exploding nearby. Every single person, including myself, have experiences and stories to be telling you how the 2 seconds before, 2 minutes before, them themselves, their children, were standing right at that point where the rocket has exploded. Depending here on a Russian roulette reality, depending here on luck, coincidences, on miracles, depending on telling the story, that's the hardest thing to explain to people. It became very part of the daily routine life. Having said that, you still have a flourishing city, beautiful park areas, you got cranes all around the city building up new neighborhoods. People are choosing to move into this town today. So this very powerful Israeli mentality living here on the Gaza border.
The resiliency is amazing to me.
This true resilience on the personal level, on the national level, is something which is very, very powerful to experience firsthand personally as well.
Tell us again real quick before we go here to the commercial, how far again is Sderot from the Gaza border, from Hamas land, the Gaza border?
We're less than 1 mile away from the Gaza Strip.
Less than 1 mile away from Hamas, Islamic Jihad, now ISIS elements there in Gaza.
Al-Qaeda.
Al-Qaeda.
The black rockets
Yeah.
are Al-Qaeda.
We have Al-Qaeda rockets.
The first cells of Al-Qaeda were found in Gaza 3 months after the disengagement from Gaza.
Well, and folks, let me tell you, these are not firecrackers. I'm standing here right now. You see them on camera, these rockets and missiles. This is major stuff. This is Al-Qaeda, Hamas, Islamic Jihad, as Noam said. These are Iranian-made, highly advanced, increasingly advanced rockets and missiles that are being fired just 1 mile from this great town of Sderot in southern Israel. Well, we have much more coming up with Noam Badin from Sderot, Israel. Stick around. It's the Watchman. It's Kufi, only right here on TBN. Don't move.
On nearly every border, Israel is surrounded by enemies that seek its destruction. Vicious terror groups like ISIS, Hezbollah, and Hamas are acquiring deadlier and more advanced weapons as Iran moves ever closer to a nuclear bomb. At the UN, the international community shuns Israel. On college campuses, Jewish students are harassed and intimidated. God's chosen people are facing an all-out assault. As a Christian, how will you answer God if you choose to do nothing? It's time for Christians to take a stand. Join Kufi, America's largest pro-Israel organization, where 3 million Christians across the United States are working together to defend Israel in our classrooms, churches, and communities. From college campuses to Capitol Hill, Kufi is making a difference and fighting for Israel. Visit our website, cufi.org, and join the movement for such a time as this.
So Noam, usually in the United States, when you wait for a bus, it's a very leisurely activity. You may just have a few people sitting there, checking their phone, minding their business.
So over here in the south, in Sderot, on the southern border with Gaza, you have the bus stop or bomb shelters, basically. So while you're waiting on a bus, you always have a secured room to actually run to once a siren actually goes off. So what's interesting about seeing here in Sderot visually, you see perfectly what Israel has done to protect its citizens by investing overall on the Gaza border over $500 million only for bomb shelters.
Well, I mean, to me, that's pretty amazing, Noam. I mean, you're waiting for the bus, and the threat is so imminent that you need a bomb shelter on hand just in case. And as you said, 15 seconds to get into that shelter. Gather your kids, gather a baby carriage, and get into that shelter.
Or what child first do you protect? What child first do you take in order to run for shelter? I've had many more dilemmas on the personal level. Who do you protect first, having this limited time? And not easy cases of dealing with that kind of humanistic, dramatic kind of scenes during that time of being under rocket fire in the middle of the road.
How many of these are there? Are these bus stops around Sderot are also bomb shelters? This is normal in Sderot.
Yeah, this is very normal. The whole buildup of bomb shelters in this town started off like 5 years ago, more or less. And the way we call Sderot is the bomb shelter capital of the world. And this image of the massive buildup of bomb shelters attached to the old apartment buildings like you can see behind you, this is a unique project that's been done in this town like no other place in the country or in the world. And seeing that visual, you see how specifically this town became one of the most bombarded cities since World War II.
Since World War II.
And this is the result of it.
Noam, explain this a little bit more now. We see the bus stop bomb shelter, obviously, which is stunning, I think, for an American audience. Explain this. These are new apartment buildings, right? They've been built in the past few years. Explain a little bit more how these also have bomb shelters.
You can see the old apartment buildings on one side. What's attached to it are the bomb shelters themselves.
Wow.
Usually you think a bomb shelter is like underneath the ground, like a huge bunker.
Exactly.
But because you have 15 seconds and not enough to do almost anything, every single house today, every single residential area or neighborhood would have a bomb shelter attached to the apartment building itself.
Folks, that's kind of like the ultimate panic room. We know that term in the United States, a panic room. So this is becoming the norm in Israel, in Sderot as well.
Yeah, I mean, the truth is, in Israel, in terms of bomb shelters or security room, since the first Intifada, the first Arab uprising against Israel towards the end of the 80s, beginning of the 90s, it's a law in Israel, the entire Israel, that part of the regulation of building a house, an apartment in Israel, you have to have a bomb shelter. That's the entire Israel.
It's a must, okay.
But these homes that were built up in the 50s and 60s had no bomb shelters. Sure. It took many years to be under rocket fire to eventually having the government investing overall estimated cost of $500 million for protection. And that's why when you have less physical damages or injuries on the Israeli side, that's part of the result of it. Because Israel has protected its citizens, first of all. Overall, this became the only region in the entire Western world having rockets, missiles being fired and threatening civilian populations for the past over a decade. And somehow people did not even hear about this.
And that is a key point to remember. And coming up, we're going to talk about the impact of the madness from Gaza, the jihad, the rockets and missiles coming from Gaza into Sderot. We're going to talk about the impact on the children of Sderot. That's coming up. More with Noam Bedin from the Sderot Media Center. It's the Watchman. It's Christians United for Israel from Sderot, Israel, only right here on TBN. Stick around.
Iran's rulers promised to destroy my country, murder my people. The response from nearly every one of the governments represented here has been absolutely nothing.
To see evil and not call it evil is evil. Not to speak is to speak. Not to act is to act. God will not hold us harmless.
Join America's largest pro-Israel organization, Christians United for Israel, on July 18th and 19th for our annual Washington Summit. You'll meet with your elected officials and hear from experts and leaders, including Pastor John Hagee, Dr. David Jeremiah, Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North, and yours truly, Erick Stakelbeck. To register for CUFI's Washington Summit, call 1-877-706-2834 or visit cufi.org. Enter the promo code Watchman to attend the summit for a special discounted rate of just $75.
And welcome back to the Watchman, only right here on TBN. We are in Sderot, Israel, folks, telling you the situation in this great town just a mile from the Gaza border where Hamas lives and breathes. And we're joined by our friend Noam Bedin of the Sderot Media Center. Now, Noam, there's a huge human impact to these thousands and thousands of rockets and missiles that have barraged Sderot over the past several years. Very important human impact and an impact on children here in Sderot that our audience needs to know about. We're in a playground now, but this just isn't any old playground. Tell us about where we're standing right now.
Okay, so as you can see right now, this is a protected sheltered caterpillar that was built for children. So for children to feel more safe when they're playing around the playground itself, they have a creative bomb shelter for them to actually feel more safe and more friendly oriented for children running for their lives, being under rocket fire. Yeah. What's amazing, at the entrance of the caterpillars, you would have actually signs saying that if you have a siren going off, you go into the shelter over the orange line and then you're protected. And it's interesting, actually, people always ask, how come there are no doors to the bomb shelter? It's because when children come out here, having 15 seconds to run for your life, you do not want to be struggling with that door to run into the bomb shelter itself. What other country in the world has a bomb shelter and a playground in the same photograph? While at the same time, right behind there, off in the distance, cranes are being built up. People are choosing to move into this reality. So you have this very unique experience right over here that people are choosing to maintaining their daily routine life, worshiping life as much as they can. And that's part of the most very powerful story of Sderot today, representing a very unique kind of situation, a unique reality where civilians have been targeted, and we're trying anywhere as possible to maintain a daily routine life as much as we can.
Noam, that is such an important point for our viewers. I'm so glad you brought it up because, yes, Sderot is under threat. We know that. You've laid it out very eloquently. But life goes on here, and people here continue to thrive, the resiliency. Talk a little bit more about the resiliency of the people of Sderot. You see an example here, I think, with the caterpillars. Okay, you want to fire bombs at us? We will just fortify our playgrounds. We're not leaving our kindergartens. Talk more about that. Talk about some of the development, some of the new immigration into this city. Talk about some of the encouraging things that are going on here.
I mean, you know, for me doing this for many years, half of my adult life, I've been chasing rockets and dealing with this rocket reality and the people living out here as well. And I came to realize how this story of Sderot representing the microcosm of the entire Israeli society. I came to realize who actually lives in this town, which is part of the story of Israel, you know, the miracle of Israel as well. Who lives here? You had the Jews at the beginning that moved out to this town, came from North Africa, like countries like Morocco, Tunisia, Libya, Algeria, Egypt, Iraq, Iran, moving out to this region. In the past 35 years, Jews coming from former Soviet Union countries, from Ethiopia, the Ethiopian Jews. Since 2006, we have Jewish communities coming out from Northeast India, Myanmar, Peru. We call them the Lost Tribes. Down over here, we have over 50 Muslim Arab families living here in Sderot.
In Sderot?
In Sderot. They're called collaborators in Gaza. They gave information to Israel. It was too dangerous for them to keep on living in Gaza. So they were resettled here in Sderot for over the past 15, 20 years.
So the Israelis, the Jewish people, gave these Arab Muslim families safe haven right here in Israel.
They're in the schools, so they go to the marketplace. They're part of the, embedded into the culture, into the area itself. You have a couple Christians living out here. Yeah. Over 1,000 Sudanese, Eritreans, Africans, they immigrated to this part of the region. All the kibbutzim all around Sderot, you have the entire Latin American countries. If it's a kibbutz of Brazilian Jews, if it's a kibbutz from Argentina. And overall, getting across to people having a diversity of people's backgrounds, beliefs, behavior, living here peacefully together, being targeted only because they're considered living in the state of Israel, in the land of Israel, is something so powerful to explain today what this town today is standing for.
And Noam, talk a bit more about the human impact, in particular on the children here in Sderot. We're obviously standing in a fortified kindergarten playground. I'd imagine that PTSD is pretty prevalent here among the children dealing with these rocket and missile barrages. Tell us a little bit more about how the kids here in Sderot have been affected.
Okay, well, there are some researchers saying that up to 94% of children in this town and surrounding areas have been suffering from symptoms of PTSD. I'll be honest, the experience of moving into this town, reflecting to children, my experience of moving to this town was waking up every single morning with a collective alarm clock. We had sirens going off from 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock in the morning, followed by a direct hit. Why first thing in the morning? Of course, this is the time how everybody's waking up. Parents on the way to shop, to work, and the children on the way to the kindergartens and schools. That was my experience moving into this town. Every single morning, a siren going off.
Intentionally, obviously, intentionally timed by the likes of Hamas. Good morning, Israel. Here's some rockets and missiles.
That's part of the strategic aspects.
Children are going to school.
Of course, that's the main favorite targets. We have live documentation on the first day of school, documenting children on the way to school, knowing that something's going to be happening. We film the children running for their lives into the school itself, having sirens going off, followed by direct hits into the city itself. It can be very quiet here for 1-2 weeks. The quieter it gets, the less you're thinking about the rocket fire. Therefore, more vulnerable from experience. Once you have that one siren go off, you go back to the first day you've experienced a rocket explode nearby. You still have 15 seconds to run for your life, and you're sure the rocket is aiming right towards you. I came to realize that children in schools, elementary schools, their first lesson in the school was a drawing lesson for them to express themselves on drawings and showing what they've been going through as well. So I collected many of these drawings all around this region. They're showing the same pattern, of course, of a regular drawing of a child, of a house, a tree, and rockets. And every single drawing over here, you have the same kind of pattern of a rocket being fired. And that's, as we said, having a very unique experience. I mean, look how much expression actually have in this kind of drawing over here. Look how ironic this actually is. You have the sun here is sad, people here are smiling. Yeah. It shows, again, a very, a very unique kind of reality that is being expressed through the arts of media. Yeah. And that's part of many of our projects at the Sderot Media Center, was actually providing tools for residents, for young adults to express themselves through, if it's acting out in a theater play, if it's providing tools in photography, in creative writing contests, any way it's possible to get your story out there and using the results as a human story to present around to the world.
And Noam, look, that's why it's so important that you're doing the work you're doing at the Sderot Media Center. And folks, that's why it's so important that we're bringing this information to you here on The Watchman. More coming up after the break with Noam Bedin of the Sderot Media Center. It's The Watchman, Christians United for Israel, only right here on TBN in Sderot, Israel, just a mile from the Gaza border. Stick around.
Centuries-old churches and monasteries burnt to the ground, Christian villages ransacked, women and children enslaved, and believers in Jesus led to their deaths. ISIS has declared an all-out war on Christians. Believers in the Middle East outside of Israel are suffering horrible persecution. Christians United for Israel will not remain silent as Islamic extremists carry out a genocide against our brothers and sisters in Christ. On Capitol Hill, CUFI is working hard to ensure America's allies receive the aid they need to defeat ISIS. CUFI is leading a Raise Your Voice campaign to bring the issue front and center for Christians across America. Visit our website, cufi.org, to find out how you can stand with CUFI as we stand up for the persecuted church. If not us, who? And if not now, when?
And welcome back to The Watchman, only right here on TBN. Folks, I'm so glad we had the opportunity to bring you inside Sderot today. This is a wonderful community, despite all the horrific terror, thousands upon thousands of rockets and missiles traumatizing the families, the children here. Despite all of it, despite the massive human impact, this community continues to thrive. I think it's a symbol, okay, as we said, it's a symbol for the terror campaign against Israel, obviously, for Hamas's genocidal campaign against the Jewish people, but I think it's also a great symbol of the resiliency of the Jewish people and the Jewish state. Israel will not only survive, it will continue to thrive. I think Sderot is a great symbol of that, and here at Christians United for Israel, we want to continue to stress that. You know, God said that He would never leave nor forsake the Jewish people. He encouraged Joshua to be strong and courageous, and He assured Israel that He would always be with them. When I'm here in Sderot, I can see that it's true. God is a promise keeper, and despite the myriad of challenges coming against Israel from a security perspective, from a diplomatic perspective, Israel not only continues to exist, it continues to thrive and be a light to the nations. So, thank you for joining us this week in this wonderful community in southern Israel called Sderot. Until next time, God bless you, and remember, never hold your peace.